Hi, I'm Brad Whitaker, Product Specialist with Lineman's Testing Laboratories of Canada. As a former arborist, fall protection trainer, and fall protection inspector, a pre-use visual inspection of my equipment was a very important part of my daily routine. I'm going to show you how I would go through and do a pre-use visual inspection of my full body harness. Every full body harness comes with a user's manual that's imperative to read before doing any pre-use inspection, let alone putting on the harness in the first place. The first place I usually start when I do a pre-use visual inspection is I inspect the labeling system on that specific piece of equipment. When inspecting the manufacturer's labels, the pieces of information you're looking for is the serial number, the model number, the date of manufacturing, as well as the CSA stamp and specific CSA standard that it meets. So the next step I would generally do in preparing my full body harness for a pre-use inspection is I would take off any of the excess padding that's actually not required for the harness itself. So this back pad here, I would take this off. And the reason why I would take this off is because a lot of the times these back D-pads and excess padding is hiding parts of the webbing that's going to make it difficult for you to do a full inspection on that piece of equipment. So now that we've got all the excess padding and anything else that's not really required on the full body harness itself, where I would start is I would always start at the back D-ring. You're going to look for any signs whatsoever of the piece of equipment having any deformities, elongation, cracks, rust, pitting, any sharp edges. And another way you can check for sharp edges is run your finger on the inside of the D-ring. You know, obviously you're going to feel that there's any sharp edges because it's going to catch on your finger. You're also going to want to move the webbing from behind the D-ring, so you're going to be able to actually see in behind the D-ring, because this webbing is going to hide this part of the D-ring, and you have to inspect that just as much as any other part of the D-ring itself. Now that we've inspected the D-ring and we're happy with the condition of it, we move to the back D-pad. This is made out of plastic generally, but it's just as important as the back D-ring itself for the harness to be able to do its job. The types of things we're looking for on the harness back D-pad is any cracks, wear points, sharp edges, gouges, cuts, anything that's obviously going to have an effect on that part of the harness to do its job. Now that we've inspected the back D-ring, the back D-pad, we're going to start working our way down the back of the harness. So the things we're looking for when we're inspecting our webbing is, cuts, fraying, excess fraying, chemical damage, sun damage. Some damage is going to show itself because the webbing is going to have a faded look to it. All right, you're going to look for any burn holes, basically any anomalies within the webbing itself that's going to have an effect on the ability for that harness to arrest a fall. And what these are what's called fall impact indicators. All right, so when this full body harness is exposed to a fall, what's going to happen is this stitching is going to tear and it's going to pull apart. All right, so when you're inspecting your harness and you notice that one or both of these are no longer connected, this harness has been exposed to a fall and needs to be taken out of service. What we're going to be also looking for is these stitch patterns here. All right, so as we go down, we're going to look for these stitch patterns. We're looking for no more than one or two pulled strands. Now what you're going to notice on a lot of harnesses is this end little component right here. This is called a finish stitch. If you notice that, they're going to be pretty much on every single stitch pattern here. All right, that's completely acceptable because that's just where the stitch begins and ends. We're also going to look in behind there just to make sure that there's nothing pulling there. Look at both sides of the piece of equipment on the stitching. All right, and you're going to do that for all your stitch patterns, top and bottom, as you continue to work your way down the harness. The next thing we're going to want to finish up with is we're going to do the leg straps of the harness. All right, so here's the leg straps. What we're going to do is we're going to make sure that, again, any metal component that's involved in the leg straps is completely intact. You're also going to want to test to make sure it works. Now this is pass-through buckles, so obviously you want to pass it through, and then you're going to want to check that it seats properly and that it's going to function properly. In some cases you may have quick connect buckles, you may have what's called parachute buckles, or even leg straps with tongue and grommets. All right, so again, on that specific piece of equipment, refer to your user's manual on the proper method of doing a pre-use inspection on those various other methods of connecting your leg straps and other buckles. Another question that gets asked a lot is about excess webbing on your leg straps. What can I do with it? Can I cut it off? Can I tape it down? The answer realistically to both is no. No modifications can be made to a CSA approved piece of equipment in any capacity outside being done by the manufacturer itself. So now that we've had an opportunity to inspect the webbing of the leg straps, the buckles of the leg straps, and all associated components of the leg straps itself, the next thing we're going to want to inspect on the back of the full body harness is this component right here, which is called the subpelvic strap. This is realistically the crux of your full body harness and the most important part. The reason for that is when you fall, this subpelvic strap is the main component that's going to redirect all of those fall arrest forces into the lower half of your body, keeping it away from your internal organs of your upper half. Now that we've essentially completed the inspection of the back portion of the harness, I'm going to flip it around so we can do the front. I would go right back to the D-ring, and I would start there and work my way down again. I would stop at the chest strap, which is this portion right here. This has buckles, so I'm going to and pass-through buckles. So I'm going to pass it through, verify that it functions and works properly, make sure it seats properly. The last part of the chest strap that I always inspect is these little components right here. These are the chest strap positioners. They should be able to move up and down the harness by pulling. Okay. They shouldn't be able to move easily. It should take some force to move them, because obviously once they're in place, when we're going to be using the harness, we want them to stay where we put them. The fact that webbing is being put through these, we are going to want to inspect underneath it as well to the best of our ability. They don't necessarily make it that easy to inspect behind it, but you're going to want to inspect as much as you can. All right, so now that we've completed inspecting the chest strap, again, we're going to continue working our way down the webbing, okay, doing our U-shapes visually and feeling it as we go. You'll notice on all these buckles here, they have one keeper and generally a second keeper. The reason why these need to be here is they prevent the harness webbing from creeping when it's since been adjusted. All right, because once we get the harness sized and fitted properly on us, we don't want it to move anywhere. So these are just as important as any other part of the harness. And the way I generally finish off my pre-use inspection is I connect all the buckles back up again. And the reason why I'm going to connect everything back up again is I just want to be able to do a final visual inspection of the entire piece of equipment as a whole and make sure that everything looks the way it should after I've done my pre-use inspection. This process roughly took me about 5 minutes, and if you ask me, I don't think 5 minutes is a very long time investment to ensure that the piece of equipment that is basically there to save my life is a good working condition and going to do the job that it's intended to do. If you find at any point during your pre-use visual inspection any reason whatsoever of failure, take the device out of service, report it to the appropriate people within your company, and they can get in contact with an LTL product specialist for a replacement piece of equipment. Thank you for joining me today and going through the process of doing a pre-use visual inspection of a full body harness, and I hope you have a safe day.